Welcome to the lunch session. Hope you have food, water, everything you need for a strong afternoon. I'm excited for today's session because of the title. It's Alphabet Soup, putting IoT, AI, and 5G to work in multifamily. And it's a fitting title for a lunch session. It's the first time I've ever had a food reference in a title. And fun fact about me, so I'm Heather Young, if we haven't met yet. I'm the moderator for this track. And in middle school, I was the queen of jokes. It was my favorite thing in the whole world. And I was like, well, we have soup in the title. So I'm starting off with a couple soup jokes just because I can. So how do you know if you made soup mad? It'll start stewing. I have an even better one. Did you hear about the soup bowl that was almost empty? It had a leak in it, which is funny if you know what a leek is and that it's a vegetable and not actually a leek. Last but not least, why do people always feel like they have to eat clam chowder at seaside restaurants? They feel peer pressure to order it. So there's my soup jokes for the day. Okay, jokes aside, from enhancing resident experiences to optimizing maintenance, lowering bottom lines, establishing and enabling new connectivity-based models, there's a lot of technologies such as IoT, AI, and 5G that are really reshaping the way that we think about multifamily living and what's possible. And we're going to explore that in this session today. This session is going to be informative because of the panel that I have with me. So I'm going to have you all take about a minute, introduce yourselves, and let us know who you are and what you do. Starting right here.
Hi, I'm Chris Kimbrough. I am Chief Strategy Officer for SKBM Smart Technology. I recognize some faces from the boardroom meeting last night, so this is old news to you. But we are two things. We are a one-stop prop tech shop for smart tech in multifamily. We have strategic partnerships. I have sat on your side before. I worked for Greystar and CBRE. Know where the pain, I've felt the pain. So one of our goals is to help alleviate that pain for you. And the other thing is we are a licensed GC and have installed over 450,000 units of smart home with our own crews across the country. We're not a call center. So that was one of the problems I ran into many times. And what Scott Keene and Bill Myers, SKBM, have built is unparalleled in multifamily. So anybody wants to talk about all that, I'm happy to do so.
Good afternoon. So I'm Jay Rawls. I'm with Northwood Raven. We are a Charlotte-based vertically integrated development, construction, design, and management firm. We're in top 20 NMHC largest apartment builders, top 20 largest apartment developer category. We develop a lot of A-plus luxury housing, a lot of high-rise towers, mid-rise, townhome. We recently decided to dive into single-family rental space. I think we currently have 26 active projects in development, 12 of those already under construction in 6 states, highest concentration in Carolinas, Tennessee, Florida, and Georgia. So in my role, Senior Director of Operations and Technology, I work with development, IT, construction to just kind of help program a lot of our new projects in areas such as access control, water submetering, Wi-Fi network design, IoT. So my primary role is dealing with all technology, mostly software, and how we incorporate it into our day-to-day operational strategy. So I lead an operations team to handle implementations and process training, onboarding support for our property management teams. And I'm also super involved in the industry trade associations, vice president of the Greater Charlotte Apartment Association Board of Directors. And that's me.
Hi, everyone. I think we met this morning, so I'll be more brief. But Mitch Karen, I'm currently advising a bunch of prop tech companies and multifamily owner-operators. I was the co-founder of SmartRent, and I've been in multifamily my entire career.
I'm Eric Smith, founder and CTO of Oliver IQ. Oliver IQ is an IoT platform. We call it Smart Home as a Service. It allows you to actually provide smart home type features in your home, whether or not you have a security system built into that. And what's unique about us is that, first of all, we support most of the products you'd want to put in, so a consumer's kind of future-proofed against new technologies as they come out, because it's an ongoing service if they have new kinds of products, and it works with most of the popular products they might have, thinking like Sonos Light or Sonos speakers, Lutron and Leviton and Philips light switches, kind of all the popular brands. So even after the home is done, it's easy for consumers to add all their IoT devices. And our models include the support and the calls. So as a builder, you don't need to worry about those kinds of things. A little bit of history. I was the founder years ago of a company called Control4. In the kind of high-end home automation market, multi-million-dollar homes, that's a very dominant player in that space. And we started that clear back in 2003 and took it public in 2013. And so we kind of know the space, but we're back with something that's affordable enough that it can be deployed very broadly into single family and to MDU.
Thank you all. Wide range of perspectives here as we dive into the different technologies. And I'm going to actually start off with piggybacking on what we were talking about last night in the keynote, and that's AI. Just because it's, a mixed bag of, where it is and where it's going. So we have that continuation line of the early adopters. We had talked about this morning, the big fat middle of some of these smart home adoption. First and foremost, where do you see that we are in the adoption of AI? And then where do you see it becoming prevalent or being used in your experience?
I could start, I guess, yeah. Well, first off, people have been using AI for a long time. Not necessarily may realize it, but a lot of chatbots and a lot of the things behind the scenes are using AI. So it's not like just because ChatGPT came out a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, AI is now a thing. It's been around for a long time. Like your Alexa in your home, that's AI. But I think for multifamily, you're really going to see it come to fruition probably in the next year in ways that are really operationally efficient from the leasing and the maintenance side. The amount of data that the companies can ingest now, that was kind of the bottleneck before, was taking swaths of data and making really good use cases out of that data. So looking at personalization of support calls, for instance, is a really, really exciting field to say, okay, this resident already had the same support issue 3 times this past year. Maybe the immediate response from the chatbot or the bot is, hey, we're going to give you a concession. Sorry, I don't know. Yes, could be concessions. Bad word. But I think there's some really cool things. I think it's still early innings though for some of the newer stuff that we're seeing. So stay tuned. You're not going to lose out necessarily if you don't do something today, because I think just the general world is still early on. Even outside of multifamily, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of noise. So don't feel like you'll be left behind if you don't do something today.
Yeah, I think it's often mismarketed. I think defining AI is tough. It's kind of a buzzword right now. So most people talk about, they market their product as AI, but it's really not. Like it's these, it's just machine learning, large language models. So I think true AI, they can, it can reason, it can learn and act autonomously. And I think that's, it's got to be able to look at things logically and learn from those things and take action on its own. And I think some of these large language models will qualify, but some people are just using this A/B testing model. So it's like, rule-based, and it's not real AI, but their marketing is AI. So I think, to your point, like I don't think, you jump in now, that's kind of what you're getting in most cases, I think. But I think over time it'll develop. Chatbots are the same thing. It's like they're scripted, pre-programmed, to have certain responses. So we're using a lot on the marketing front, AI chat, AI voice, AI email, we're testing it. And there are definitely some issues with it. And we're having to tweak some of the responses, but I think over time it'll really be able to make a lot of our jobs easier.
I'm on the board at the Consumer Electronics Show, and we had our CES on the Hill last week, and we were meeting with legislators. And one of the scary things is, just like on privacy, the federal government didn't act early enough, so then a bunch of states had to take some action on privacy. And the federal government basically screwed up. They didn't do things soon enough. But now on AI, we're really pushing the federal government to do something on it, because states are starting to do it on their own again. And there's some states trying to put out laws that require vendors to have an opt-out clause for AI. And I don't think, again, I think consumers are afraid of the stuff you see in the movies, but they don't understand when they listen to a Pandora playlist, that's AI. Anyway, some states are looking at that, and we're fighting hard to stop that from happening.
Mhm.
And I think it's a big misunderstanding because AI has been around for a very long time, like it's been said before. We're heavily leveraging it. We have a very low cost business model, and so our support is through a chatbot called Ollie. And that chatbot is trained. We train it on the things it should answer and the ways it should answer it. But AI is superhuman. It can do that. I mean, what does a tech support agent do? Are they really usually experts in the field of what they do?
Right.
They're not. They're people that have a knowledge base in front of them. They type to and they get the answers and they spit those answers back. The beautiful thing about AI is even if you train it in English, if you ask the question in Finnish, the large language model behind it can actually answer in Finnish. And it can be not only that, but the way it answers can be structured based on the way the question was asked, so it makes sense. And if you tie that into the ability to also see the tech on the back end, so it can actually see the state of the system too, if there's some known issue. We believe that right now we're about 80% of calls we believe we can take with AI. We believe we'll be at 99 plus within just a year, because if we have a question we can't answer, we can train it how to answer that question the next time. Mm-hmm. And so it allows us to provide very low cost products to people and feel in a human way. They can literally talk to this chatbot. It's not just typing. You can talk to it and it feels very natural. And if it can't answer a question, or if we even think the probability of the answer being correct is below 80%, Ollie can say, I'm going to transfer you to my friend Bill, and then Bill answers, and that might be a human still typing, but now they still get that same interaction, but the voice changes, and we see it as making it possible for new business models that were never possible before, because it can cut costs so much lower on those heavy human interactive. I mean, a phone call, most of us know that run a call center. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're lucky if it costs you less than $10 if someone calls your call center. And if you can take that away so it mostly doesn't happen, it's remarkable what can happen. And then talk about the IoT world, where it can actually modify the way you do things in your home. It can suggest, I don't like the automatic, right? Nest thermostats, I think they're cool products, but at the very beginning, they'd auto-learn what you did and start doing it. And most people turn that off. But saying, hey, we notice you do this. Every time you come home, you do X, Y, Z. Would you like that to be an automation? And we call them experiences. I think with some really cool things can come out.
And that's, I think, where the resident disclosure piece comes in. Like, do we need to tell them that we're using, because like some operationally we've used it for a long time with AI revenue management, like a yield star, LRO type pricing, daily pricing model, right? We're using AI revenue management now. So it's like, it's predicting the renter's ability to, it's predicting what the people who haven't given us notice to move out yet are going to do, right? Based on prior activity. And we're using it for AI screening. That's predicting like their ability to pay based on, all of their criteria, all the things we know about them, right? Their history, their age, all of these things is predicting their ability to pay. So then our screening model can kind of change how we're screening applicants based on what it's learning over time. And, if we approve people and then we end up evicting them, it'll probably change and make it a little bit more stringent, right? So we've used it for those types of things where residents not really interacting with it. It's just helping us with some sort of operational process. We're doing it for market surveys. Like, we're using something called Apartment IQ, where every day the system scrapes all of our competitors' websites and extracts all the pricing and how the availability that they're publishing to the public changed overnight. So we can deduce exactly which units they lease. So we can see, are they leasing more 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms? And it puts it in a system, and our teams don't have to do market surveys anymore. They don't have to call around and get bad information. So there's all of these use cases operationally. And then, you've got the chat feature where it's communicating to residents. I think where we're trying to sort of ultimately wanting to take it is like, kind of extracting that resident behavior, like at our communities. Like, we love to be able to, take the access control data and, take the amenities they're booking. But if they're fobbing into specific amenities, more often than others, we'd love to be able to see like which entrances they're using or how often they're using the gym, and then be able to narrow it down and use that data in a productive way. I think that's where we're not quite there yet. Like, I feel like there's got to be a system coming soon that'll like help us bring in all that data and actually help us figure out how to use it to.
I got an idea for you.
Yeah, like renewals or hey, you said at move-in you want to how much you love the gym. We know that you haven't been using the gym a lot because you've never fobbed into the gym. Let me resell that gym to you when your lease renewal is coming up, right? Or maybe you use this reservable office space a lot because we see you fobbing in there. come time for renewal and we're going to increase your rent 8%, we're like, you won't find this office space anywhere. But like, we're not going to go in and look for that data now, right?
Yeah.
So something has to be able to aggregate that data. But if we can get a hold of that data in a usable fashion, that's massive for us.
So I didn't want to go first because I wanted to hear them. And I think that it is still early days. I agree with everybody for AI and multifamily. It's interesting hearing you three talk, and there are, you're using point solutions, right? With AI. I do think that is in the next year going to change, where there is more of an integrated, I hate the term single pane of glass, but that's, I think where we're moving. And then in regards to data, that is just a huge problem across the board, right? We're gathering all of this data, and I have talked to many people about how do we use it effectively to actually solve for issues in multifamily. And it's like, we're still figuring out what use cases to solve for, but two, I don't think anybody out there that has unlocked the true potential of the data from all of this IoT and prop tech and software that we're deploying. So, I'm searching for the Holy Grail. I'll let everybody know if I find it.
There's so many types we could use. Like if we knew an amenity space was getting used more than another, by certain people, all in one bedrooms, they're using this amenity space more. Well, we know we want to program that more into our future projects. This one's not getting used as much. So like that type of data too would be helpful.
Yeah,
I can tell you're definitely ahead of the curve in envisioning what the data can be used for and how you use it to unlock, convenience on the operator side. I want to dig into that a little bit more before we move off of AI. Is there anything else we haven't discussed that changes the user experience or changes the operator experience as a positive? And then from there, how are you managing the gathering of the data and the communication of that with the residents to use AI to execute said things?
Yeah, for us, we've talked to our legal team about that, and they said to just put a disclosure in the lease, that we could use the data. Because I think, I don't think we need to share any personal information, name, email, phone, nothing private. We would just like to be able to feed that over to this system, whatever can make it usable for us. I think that's what a lot of people will be concerned about. Is there some sort of creepy privacy, issue here? I personally think, based on what legal's saying, we'd be okay with a disclaimer in the lease. I don't know.
If I'm a resident, I want the data to be, not shared, but I want it to be put to good use. Mm-hmm. Like again, if my support experience, my resident experience can be enhanced because, Northwood is using the data through their vendors in a meaningful way to make my, work order get closed faster or get into a unit faster, like schedule the tour faster. If any process that's currently, additional tasks or takes too long, whether that's from the leasing side, the maintenance side, or anything in between, if AI can help that from a resident experience perspective, and it's not, again, your data is not getting shared to some third party that's going to blast you with ads, I take that as a positive overall.
So, that becomes like an issue of explaining though to the prospective tenant or the tenant what the value prop is behind letting the AI happen.
For sure, but they're already using it today. Like 100 million people are using ChatGPT. Like everyone's already using these tools. So by the time it hits multifamily, I think they'll be receptive of it.
I made a point earlier, like social media. Every social media platform they're engaged in uses it. Everyone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think, they get away with the quick terms and conditions, right when you first log in, and then they're good.
Yeah.
Right. But we're using it to enhance their experience. When I get, I want to get targeted ads on social media for things that I want to buy. It's the same kind of thing,
That becomes kind of almost a tech as brand situation where you're doing these things to improve the tenants' lives, and you need to be able to communicate it effectively to set you apart from everybody else.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. I agree.
One thing I was going to say is, as the multifamily industry is moving towards this centralization model, a lot of calls are going to some central call center. It's not going to the property manager. And before, if it was going to the property manager, they know they usually know who's living in the building, especially if it's a sub 200 unit building. They know everybody. If it's a 500 unit building, maybe they don't. That's the assistant manager's job. But now the calls are going to a central call center that's less personalized. And so if the bots, I hate to say, like a chat bot, can be more personalized, even though it may be not a human being, I actually think that's a better experience than calling into some support center, probably offshore, who doesn't really know what you're going through. They're 10,000 miles away from you. So,
well, and a chat bot learns instantly. Here, the other thing I've seen, we've all had that experience when you're calling someone big, like Delta Airlines or Marriott Hotels, and you get that moronic support agent. So you just hang up and you dial again because they're not going to figure it out, and that happens. The beauty of a chat bot is it knows everything and it answers the same question the same way properly every time. It catches the nuances. The other thing is it can be trained instantly. So if there's a new offering for some discount on a product, if you calling the odds that every person actually read their memo that morning and they know the answer to that question about that thing, chatbots are perfect at remembering that information. They don't ever mess up that way.
Yeah, we're trying to do something right now. We're calling it enhance your stay. So it's kind of like when you book a flight, they're like, do you want extra leg room? Do you want to upgrade to this? Do you want to board a little bit earlier? And so it happens every time, right? When you book a flight and do so many other things. So we're trying to incorporate that in. We're working with our website builder now to put that on, to kind of create sort of a shopping cart experience, but we don't want to just offer them everything. We want to make sure, we want to try to be able to use AI to sort of, offer what we think is important to them versus, so we're focusing first on rentable items. So garages, storage, and premium parking. Because we're like if someone offered me premium parking, especially if I'm leasing sight unseen, which a lot of our people are doing now because of the virtual tours and some maybe self-guided tours, they may not know that we offer, premium parking this close to their unit. They can be reserved. So, for us to be able to suggest that, right, is really nice. So we're starting with rentable items and we're moving that over to services. We have a resident app where, residents can book housekeeping and TV mounting and handyman service, massage. We had an IV drips in there that come to their apartment. So we've got all these services they can book, but we're trying to sort of create that at the leasing experience too. Do you want to go ahead and sign up for housekeeping every other week, right? So we're trying to figure out how we can incorporate that in because I don't think anybody I'm aware of is doing it.
Tell me more about this IV drip situation.
We all need an idea.
We're testing that on the property now.
Wow.
Yeah, and we get a rev share from all of them.
Eric, and also to piggyback on what you said, I feel like you guys are you're through that pain struggle of launching a chatbot, getting it to learn, working through, really enhancing what it can do. For anyone here who's considering it, hasn't done it yet, hasn't tried it yet, what are your words of wisdom of what you've made it through to get to the side of where it really does enhance both experiences?
Well, I will say, as the operator, we've used several. A lot of them are just glorified scheduling tools. I think the goal is to get the tour right. Most of what is out there now is, it's large language models with A/B testing. So you program in the responses, so you kind of know what it's going to say. Right, I don't think we're to the point
yet. It's not
Gen
AI.
None of them are that way now for our industry currently. So it's all about how you set it up, typically. But I think words of wisdom is, and you mentioned this, have an option in there where they can say they want to talk to a real person, and a lot of the chatbots will then forward that to a real person, or either instantly if a real person is available, or it'll leave them a message to call them right back. So that's probably my biggest word of advice. But there's a lot of setup with most of them because there's a lot of different types of questions that can be asked. So that's just be prepared for a tremendous amount of setup.
Well, I think the data that you feed, the LLMs only work well if it's being sourced and fed with good data.
Yeah.
So if you're giving the LLMs bad data, they're not going to have a good conversation with the end user. So it's input, output. The better data you give them, the better conversations that they're going to have with your people.
Yeah, and that's what we do is we have a large language model on the back end of ours that's actually constructing the answer, but the data that's actually feeding the answer is not from the large language. It's not from the stuff that's been trained on the internet. It's from we have a vector database that sits in front of that and it has all the right answers. We've also got some technology we put in there, we call it guardrails, where if they say, what do you think of Donald Trump? The chatbot will answer, I'm trained to answer questions about all of our IQ and products it supports. Can I help you with something in that area? It doesn't give any answer. It just says that, I'm not trained to do that. So and probably if you're probably looking at an integrated product that's done it. We are working on the core technologies because we are a technology provider, but there are lots of call center packages and chatbot packages that you can just license that package. It has all the stuff you need for support agents that actually physically answer the phone, people to do text, plus it'll put a chatbot and you just train it with your information. And they can even subscribe to like a Slack channel, so if you have a new deal going and you just post it in the Slack channel, then the chatbot knows about that stuff. And there are lots of tools you can find out there, depending on what you're trying to do. I'm kind of working at a lower level where I'm building that because I'm offering it as a technology offering, but it's impressive what can happen very quickly. I'm shocked. And we find we don't need the newer, more expensive large language models if we're not using that for the content. If we're using it to construct the actual answer and the words, we can use like ChatGPT 3.5, even though it's kind of an older one, because it does perfectly adequately and it costs us like 1/5 the price.
Yeah.
All really great perspectives, great information as well. So I'm going to cut us off on AI and move us on to the next technology. We're going to look at the one that's been around for a while, but still continues to grow and has more potential, and that's IoT. Piggybacking off of that, both in how it's working with AI, and then what are you seeing right now that's the biggest area of growth in the IoT space, in the multifamily space?
I think one of the things that I'm seeing is a lot more or some focus on IoT around risk management in order to counter, or risk mitigation in order to counter the high insurance costs. So there are some startup technologies out there that, quite frankly, probably are maybe ready for prime time, maybe not ready for prime time, but there's got to be somebody at some point that starts bringing those risk mitigation solutions into a larger platform. So I think there's a lot of that going on in IoT. I think the struggle with IoT and multifamily, again, is the data and actually getting the full value out of the IoT. I think the last reason you should be installing IoT is for $30 a month per unit. And if you talk to IoT providers in multifamily, that's where they're going to tell you your ROI is. And I just think that is not a good way to go about things. The value in IoT is, I think, just starting to be realized. And what I've been having a lot of discussions with people about is, we've got this data. How do we use it? How do we help? I mean, there is a centralization movement. How does the IoT advance that? How does the IoT advance a tenant experience, tenant retention? And so that, I think, is, I think we're not, as tech companies, explaining the value well enough for IoT, and I don't think until we get smarter about it that you're going to see it becoming table stakes. Because I got a white paper coming out next month that's going to help with this. But that's where I think we just haven't fully utilized the value of IoT.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm so glad you said it, because you'll just hear, oh, well, you can just increase your rent $30 a month and it'll pay for it. I mean, that's what the selling point's been for what? Last 10 years it's been around. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've deployed smart locks, smart thermostats. We've deployed, dimmer switches. All those are great. I think, we haven't had a lot of success with self-guided tours, but I think that's just because, I think with the scale of some of our properties and the price point, I think people want more personalized experience. But we've had a lot of luck, automating move-in and move-out experiences with, just the PMS integrations, right? So that's big. Being able to wipe the thermostat settings and move out, and just the showiness, in the prospect tour, the model, just being able to say, hey Google, turn on the lights. I mean, that all looks really nice. But I think to your point, you can definitely save money on power with the thermostat settings, right? And that's kind of the only thing we've talked about so far, was saving money. But I think the leak detection's big. Like,
Yeah.
you were talking about risk mitigation. I mean, Moen yesterday was talking about a product, where it'll automatically shut the water off in the event of a leak. Smart appliances, like GE was talking about, how the appliances can be diagnosed if they're networked appliances. Like if there's an issue with the appliance, it can be diagnosed without maintenance having to go look at it. Like that's really quantifiable, and it helps the resident get a solution quicker, right? So I think that's probably the next step. But the data is huge with that, it'd be nice to know how many people are actually using these features, because I think it's a lot, but the data, we just don't have the data, because if we had the data, we could really make the business case for doing this and more in all of our new projects.
Yep.
So, if whoever is in this space, figure out a way to give us the data. I think it was mentioned yesterday about, and this is not on the risk mitigation front, but it was mentioned that I think it was Gen Z is interested in house hacks, right? And Airbnb's got a new platform which allows residents to list their units on Airbnb. Like you could say as a owner, right? I'll let you list your unit on Airbnb 1 week out of the month or something every month, right? And there's like a way for a resident to make money off their unit, right? And you have to have IoT for that. So I think that's super interesting. Just to be able to give access to that guest temporarily, you have to have all of this IoT in there, the lock and the thermostat and everything. So I think, I agree. I think the data piece is massive, and it kind of ties in with the AI data we're talking about and how we can, just really sell how the residents are using it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about it yesterday too. There's a piece of software that I just was introduced to somebody's been telling me for months I got to look at it. So finally I did look at it, and it actually does some of what you're asking. And it creates actionable insights from the data, and then communicates them to community managers or ACMs, or if you have like an RPM, it's roles based, but it does create like daily actionable insights that are like you need to reach, like not a concession, but yes, sorry, that maintenance request didn't go well. Here's a $10 Starbucks gift card, that kind of stuff.
So I'm not to plug the company. I wanted to even say the name, but I'm advising this company that has an advanced water sensor. I was talking about this earlier today, and you can actually look at water behavior, and actually the device actually delivers those insights to the property on a daily and weekly basis. So it says like, these residents are, using this much water. There's potentially a leak in this part of the building. So I think that's a really huge thing. Next step is there's a lot of IoT devices. They're collecting data, figure out a way to present it to the people. I think another really interesting area with IoT is being able to handle fraud better and to handle squatters. This is happening initially now in the single family space, where there's a ton of squatters, and the multifamily space has not really had to deal with squatters because the buildings have typically been staffed, and I'm sure your buildings are pretty much well staffed, but garden style properties that are B class and C class, there we say B class and C class, I know yours are not B class and C class, but those B class and C class properties are getting non-staffed now. When those properties get non-staffed and those doors have direct access to the outside, you're not going through a centralized access. Maybe there's a gate. Everybody can jump over a gate and the gates are open half the day. Those units now are prone to squatters. So I think there's a really interesting role that IoT is going to play going forward to help prevent that from happening.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I've been in IoT my whole career. We didn't call it IoT because the internet really wasn't, it existed, but only in universities. I've been doing this since about 1990, doing smart home technologies. I knew John Galanti back when he was CTA over Tech Home. So been around a long time. I've been doing this a long time. And as I looked at this space, and I actually am an investor in a couple groups that do development too, and of multifamily, and what we saw that you kind of helped invent it. Obviously, water sensors, thermostats, and door locks. There's a clear way to do ROI and benefit to a property. But what we saw different. I've been doing this forever, and I took Control 4 public and kind of retired for a little while, and I kept looking at the space and all these new popular IoT devices that people like. They go buy them themselves. They go get them at Best Buy. They love these things. They whether it's a Ring doorbell, which doesn't make so much sense in Ring multifamily, but lots of other products, from Sonos speakers to smart TVs to smart light bulbs and stuff. These things matter. And what we see is, let's not just look at the ROI for the property, but if a tenant sees that maybe the property comes with a platform that makes it possible to bring your own devices, and bring their own things that they care about, and there's a management system that's cost effective enough that they can actually talk to a chatbot to figure out how to integrate those things in, and the property management company doesn't need to actually do that for them, we think consumers will see that as a big benefit. They can now bring the things that they love into their place, and it'll work with the system that was there with the apartment. And we think that can be a key differentiator.
So yeah, I mean, that's awesome, because these are homes, and you're helping them to
make it their own,
make it their home.
Yeah, I mean, because people are going to renew their lease if that's the case, right? And like if we were talking about data, like if we've spent money to put this incredible lock on, right? And it's a fob works with a lock, but it's also got a PIN code, right? But that PIN code costs us $100 more for that lock, right? We installed this lock. If there was some way for me to know, okay, well, 80% of my residents are using the PIN code feature, right? Then that's clearly something that's important to them. So if I have another property with that demographic where the average age is, let's say, 40, I'm going to definitely install that lock, and I'll pay the extra money for that lock. But I need to know, that type of information, right? And because that's what's going to make people stay, or those little things they can't get anywhere else that they're using.
And we can do it with no corkage fees. You can bring your own. Sorry.
I know, you and I are talking later.
I think a lot of how many people here have bought an IoT device?
I would
Doorbell,
hope everybody raises their hand.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah. So everybody's walking around with those devices. They've made the investment, giving them a platform as they move in. That's a great direction to move. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I'm going to move on now from IoT, which we could also talk about forever, the whole panel, in addition to AI, and just talk about 5G and that connectivity and where you see that sitting right now in the multifamily space. How is it changing what the operators can do, and how is it changing the resident experience?
I'm going to, if you don't mind. So I come from a telecom background. I spent a few years trying to convince commercial office to install distributed antenna systems to improve cellular in buildings. When I was with Graystar, I would catch the telecom questions. I had one request in 2 years for cellular in building. In a notorious dead zone, South End Charlotte, new development, they knew they were going to need a DAS system. That was, I was just telling Heather before we started, I have had 4 venture capital firms reach out to me recently about investing in 5G in cellular for multifamily. I don't know what's driving it. One of the things is like a lot of smart home providers, and Mitch, you know this from personal experience, are using the cellular connection to power their hubs, connect all the IoT devices. When I first started in multifamily and I heard that, I thought that was possibly the worst idea I'd ever heard.
You didn't tell me that straight to my face.
I did, but like, especially if you're sticking them in an equipment panel or over.
Oh, right behind the refrigerator.
Yeah, and so and you've got more and more buildings with things like low E glass. Well, low E glass blocks radiation. RF signal is radiation. Yeah. And the as we get further down the 5G build out, 5G does not penetrate buildings as well as 4G does. So you're going to have, I think you're increasingly, maybe not garden style, but mid-rise, high-rise, I think you're increasingly going to start seeing cellular issues in multifamily. My stance on that has been install managed Wi-Fi, enable Wi-Fi calling across the property. There is a clear ROI on managed Wi-Fi, provided the FCC doesn't totally mess up that. But I struggle to find the value prop for 5G in multifamily. But it is something like if anybody is installing, I was mentioning it last night. Like I've seen new dev where I work with somebody I've known a very long time, a company that started out as a DAS provider now has moved into managed Wi-Fi. And I'm like, where are you doing DAS and multifamily? He's like, new dev, urban markets. And he's like, they need the public safety DAS. And the incremental cost of putting a consumer DAS over that is negligible in the greater scheme of things if you're doing new dev. So we're doing both. And he's seeing people also adding managed Wi-Fi on top of that. So there's an article from many years ago now in the New York Times about a luxury high-rise in New York City, and they couldn't lease it up because everybody was checking their cell phone when they went into the unit, and there was no cell signal.
Yeah.
That happens. You get over about the 10th floor in a high-rise, the towers aren't tall enough. You're not getting cell signal. You're getting kind of ambient noise. So if anybody in this room is installing DAS, I would very much like a few words with you. But yeah, it's I'm keeping a close eye on it because there's something going on that I'm not quite getting yet. And the carriers have been asleep for several months on their 5G build-outs. AT&T just woke up.
I mean, it's been years.
Huh?
It's been years. It's an abysmal rollout.
Yeah, it's an abysmal rollout. It's not, it was always like, oh, it's this miracle. Yeah. This miracle technology is going to solve for so much. I mean, and the thing is, it just, it doesn't. Well, and so like 5G in buildings,
well, I think the other difficulty too is a lot of the IoT devices, yes, you may have a hub that connects to it, but there are a ton of other devices that are just not going to have 5G capabilities. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and using the managed Wi-Fi route, that's just a way better route. It's going to give you much more reliable blanketed coverage. And the reality is whether it's your phone or IoT devices, it's just going to use that overall.
Well, plus there are technologies out there like Passport. There are a couple of vendors that use it really well where you're riding on your carrier network over the managed Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it really having the potential that it was initially, sort of out the gates published to have. I mean, I think managed Wi-Fi is critical. I think the speeds matter. We're just going to keep adding hundreds of new devices on every property of the network. So not just in-unit devices, but to your point, we have so many devices as the owner operating on sub VLANs, like AI cameras. We're doing, where you can just type in we're using Wave Sync and Flock Safety and OpenEye, and you can key in, black BMW SUV, and it'll pull up all of those. It'll extract every license tag, right? So these things are all running. We might have 100 of these on a property. We have to have a good, solid network on the property. We can handle those with 5G. That's impossible. All of that's really important to us from a security and safety standpoint. So we started to do bulk Wi-Fi on all of our projects. We're doing, every single one. For years, we were residents want to have choice and pick their own providers. So we'd sign these non-exclusive agreements with 2 or 3 providers on every property. And then we were no, now people don't really care about having choice. They just care about having really good quality internet. And so we're signing these long-term bulk deals with one provider. So we're obviously wanting a managed network, which is our goal. We want fiber to the unit managed, but some of the lower density stuff, I know some of y'all do a lot of build to rent single family stuff, and we're doing some hybrid projects with single family apartments, townhomes, quads, kind of in one project. And most operators, just because of cost, won't do fiber to unit because it's just, if you got a 40-acre site with a whole bunch of houses, it's just, you can't do it. It's just cost prohibitive. So what's really nice is we're trying some new bulk offerings where we're doing bulk, but we can do point. Well, we can do, it's unmanaged, but it's still.
Is it point to point?
So there's a new product that one provider's offering, and I hope others are. They're only doing it for greenfields, where they're just putting residential grade, retail grade equipment into the unit, but it's just permanently installed. So they're not doing your traditional managed Wi-Fi APs, but it gives us that, they're leaving, because it's permanently installed, we have that permanent SSID, so when the units are vacant, we still have the SSID for our IoT, which is huge. And if you're doing a retrofit, you're not gonna go in and tear the whole place up and put fiber in just to have managed Wi-Fi. So it's a nice sort of solution for a retrofit, or you're like greenfield projects that are, super low density. So, I mean, our main goal with it is to just ensure that like we're doing at least a gig. We manage, gig up and down, symmetrical gig. Google Fiber, though, I met with them a few weeks ago. They are selling their product really hard because like this, you can do like a gig as the landlord. You can offer a gig symmetrical, but like residents are able to upgrade to like 2 or 5 or 10, and they're apparently testing like 20 gig service in certain markets. So like if 5G was really going to explode and be a big thing, like would Google Fiber be doing that? But the fact that they're putting all this money into that and they're selling the crap out of it's like, well, they must think that, we're going to eventually need those types of speeds. But right now, like we're kind of laughing at it because we're like, no devices can handle like those types of speeds. So like, it's a great selling point. You're like, hey, I got, 10, you can upgrade to 10 or 20 gig, but like, the residents might think that's great, but like they won't know that their devices can't support those speeds.
Yeah, well, nobody really needs 1G even. Like,
Right, they don't even our whole corporate office is powered on less than that.
Yeah.
Our whole corporate office.
Yeah, and so, but like there are 2 carriers actually. I thought they were doing retrofits. I met with them last year doing the permanently installed retail kind of equipment. Yeah, that has the separate SSID for the IoT and it's no CapEx. Yeah. Because it's all on their dime. My problem with the big carriers is their ongoing support is appalling, which I've told them to their face. I'm like
to build a better chat.
Yeah,
well, they don't interface with the property management systems. They're just not really able to handle more the enterprise multifamily concept.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem is they don't integrate.
And their net promoter scores tend to be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're installing managed, you're asking tenants to go with an unknown entity, they're not going to know. Like, there's nobody out there doing managed Wi-Fi outside of the major carriers that are like a known brand. Like, it's not. And so, the thing that we were running into with managed Wi-Fi is if it's managed Wi-Fi and you're forced into using, and I name a firm, there are a million of them out there right now. The tenants would come to the front desk or call the property staff as opposed to going to, because they would blame the property. They'd be like, you forced me to buy this. And so I think, again, though, it's a lot of education that needs to go on with tenants, and, I was working with a firm late last year doing some consulting for them. And they sent me a deck and had 3 of their most recent properties. And they're like, yeah, they love it. And, got really good feedback. And so I went to each property's website. No mention of managed Wi-Fi. 0. I'm like, you're not.
I think it's hard for leasing teams to really understand. And you how are you training your leasing teams on selling it, right? It's got a lot of advantages that are really over the heads of most leasing teams. So how do you, I haven't seen anyone who's done a really spectacular job of marketing it, whether it's a major carrier or their own network or whatever. I mean, we've tried to sort of educate our teams, but they change all the time. And
well, it's a really easy way to do it is as a prospect, you come into tour the property, you get a guest credential to jump on the network the minute you walk in the door. So if you're doing a self-guided tour, that can enhance the self-guided tour. Not even enhance it, it actually can make it happen. So I think that's a really easy way, and I don't see many of the Wi-Fi providers doing something like that.
Well, and the other selling point for me is those smaller companies, because none of them are huge right now, their ongoing customer support, especially if you pick the right one, is like there's one that I know that they pick up the phone in like less than 10 seconds. Like, it's crazy what they've built in terms of ongoing support. It is more expensive. It's more expensive to work with them, but it's, weigh your options.
And that's where the owner owns their infrastructure, right? It's not like owned by a charter or Comcast.
No.
And that's been our biggest obstacle, is just getting developers to come out of pocket and pay for that up front, and instead of just letting the major carrier pay for it. And they'll own it forever.
Yeah, but the major carriers, even with their new tech, are not enabling Wi-Fi calling. Well, if you do managed with them, but if you're doing bulk with them, and they'll tell you. I've sat in a room with them and said, "You're going to enable Wi-Fi calling." Oh yeah, that's going to happen. It can't. It's not technically possible.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. That's true.
All fascinating observations. Like, you guys know the next level of the next level of the next level, and so I want to circle back around to kind of that thought that we started with the soup. Because all of these are kind of a messy muddle. in order to get where you want to go, they play together in some degree. And so you can make soup in a million different ways, but it's about the recipe. And I think each one of you individually have your own ideas about what you would advise is the best recipe of these different technologies. So we'll start with you.
I will say it again. I say it all the time. Every building's a snowflake. Every developer is a snowflake. Every owner operator is a snowflake. Like, my job in technology is to listen to what you're trying to enable, to talk to you about where your pain points are, and to suggest. That's the whole reason I am working for SKBM. Is like, there is no one size fits all. I don't want to bring you one solution and say, this is what you should do, because you're never going to get the full value out of it. And so it really is a matter of a dialogue between the developer and the tech firm, and the tech firm needs to understand enough about real estate to actually hear you, right? That's, I think, a big problem. You will never see me show a technical deck unless you have your CTO on the phone or your CIO and they want to go into what APs I'm using and what they enable, stuff like that. I mean, I'm happy to talk about the gear, but that's not what you want to hear from tech. You want to hear, what are you solving for me? Like, how are you making my tenants' life better? How are you making my staff lives better? How are you helping me accomplish my long-term strategic goals? And that's why I always talk about technology strategy. Go out and put bunch of point solutions in. It is alphabet soup, and you end up with 80 million apps and 80 million things everybody has to look at. And you don't want to do that. If you don't have him, you need to seek a third party that's actually consultative, is my opinion, because not like I said, I've been on your side. I've listened to a million sales pitches. I have talked to vendors and told them how to revise their decks. It's one of the things that I've done for years now. But there's just I'm not going to tell you this is the perfect solution, because I could tell you one solution right now, and then I could talk to every single one of you personally, and you could be like, that's not going to work for me. Maybe one person in this room will work for.
Well, it's going to depend so much on the property too, right? I mean, It's going to depend on, how dense it is. Like, is it concrete? I mean, the 5G, we build these concrete towers with big structured parking decks. Like, no way cell signals. We have terrible cell signal in these garages. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense. But if you don't know that, right? I mean, but when you make these decisions on managed Wi-Fi and where the fiber goes and what type of IoT you have in there, these are costly decisions to change later. Like, if you're going to change every lock and every thermostat, I mean, you're coming bust the building up to put fiber in. Like, they're hard things. So for us, I guess, to your question, I think someone in the panel this morning, they were predicting a completely humanless experience, which I don't predict that to be the future. I disagree with that, but I think enough people will still want human interaction, and I think operators will still need to give a white glove experience, to be able to command the highest rents in the market and just successfully market not just their property and how amazing it is and how the units are, but just all the technology and all the amazing benefits of it. Like we were talking about with managed Wi-Fi, that's just one thing. Yeah. But like, how to be able to really sell the value of it, you're going to have people. You're not getting rid of people. You just need to be able to educate them to sell all of the stuff that you're doing. So, we're looking at that enhance your stay model where we're trying to upsell renters on things that we think they want. So we're trying to build that out and then sort of integrate that at the move-in and I think the combination of, like we were talking about with AI and IoT, I think the two of those things together to figure out, take that resident behavior information, and then if AI is learning those resident behaviors and responding to them, like we're gathering them from the IoT, it's sent to us through the managed Wi-Fi, it goes into the cloud, and then AI is doing its thing with it, right? Like that's how it really probably should work. But the last thing I'll say is we're extremely focused on app fatigue. Like our residents do not want to download 15 apps to live at our properties. Like it is just, they're over it. They're giving us bad reviews online if we make them do it. So we work with a company. They built out all-in-one white labeled apps. So each of our property has an app in the app store. So we're trying to make everything make it where everything be done on this one app. So we're trying to work with groups who who are not requiring us to use their app only. So ones that can integrate within our single app environment is what we're hoping for. So I think that's what we're hoping to do. So anytime I'm looking at something new, I'm like, can you talk to the people who build my app so we can just add it there? Can the push notifications come through there? EV chargers, like when the car is ready, can it come through there? Because they're doing everything on this app already. We've got package lockers and Butterfly MX, and all of the things are in there. So that's our focus. So I think people coming to me now with an additional app, it's just like, oh, please.
Well, that's why when I was talking about point solutions or these risk mitigation things, and the cell thing, if you can't call 911 in your parking garage, it's a huge problem.
Right?
Huge problem. But
managed Wi-Fi, you'd be okay if they allow the Wi-Fi calling. Right?
If they allow the Wi-Fi calling, but you've got to have that.
Just discuss.
You'd be amazed how many people doing new dev won't do the Wi-Fi in the garage. Sorry,
Mitch,
so
going on to you.
either hire someone like Jay if you can find someone like Jay. If you can't, then work with someone like Chris. But I would say my suggestion is, create a general strategy for your portfolio for Wi-Fi, for IoT, and for AI. For again, not every property is the same. So you may not put the same Wi-Fi in a building here in Nashville versus a building in Florida. With IoT, a garden-style property needs a different IoT and access control package than a high-rise. So create a general strategy for both of those. And with AI, again, it's still early innings. You're not going to get left behind if you don't do something today. Almost everything we talked about regarding AI, is after the fact, meaning it's all about data. So if you don't make the right decision today in a project that's going to come online in 3 years, you're not going to be left behind on that front.
That's a good point.
And the last thing I'll say is if you find a right recipe for that property in Florida versus that property there, don't forget that each tenant actually wants their own recipe too, and find solutions like ours that allow you to customize to them so they can also make it their home and make it do the things they want it to do.
Wise words. Yep. Thank you all so very much. We are at time. I have a couple of announcements, but before I make them, quick round of applause for all the insight this team shared.